Pulling the Thread podcast, episode 98.
Why don't we just do 100?
What's the real number?
97.
Pulling the Thread podcast, episode 97.
Or 100?
Okay.
Is 100? Wait.
197.
Is 100 the last episode? Because we had talked about this before.
We did 126 before.
So what do we got to do? 127?
Whatever you want to do.
Count down to the end of the Pulling
And then
the Thread.
we'll just stop this and we'll start a new podcast.
What will we call it?
What do you want it to be about? We're going to skate to one song and one song only.
Okay, I like it.
My lumps, my lovely lady lumps.
I like it. What? Do you know what we missed yesterday?
My birthday?
No.
That's today.
What was yesterday?
The alien invasion.
Somebody said something about that, right? I'm like, look, you know how you know it's bullshit? If they give you a date.
Yeah.
They never make the date. It never happens.
But I always like, because it was so to the point where they were like 9 a.m. Eastern time, battle over Washington, D.C. I'm like,
who's putting this out? CNN?
Who? Well, okay. Do you know the story behind it?
No.
Okay,
I guess
so
I don't.
1989, this
radio telescope. How all the movies start.
This uber rich dude decides to he creates a computer program. It's not AI. It's just computers like talking to each other, and he creates this program that predicts the future.
Pong became self-aware.
It predicts the future, but it basically what it does is it says a ton of shit. It's not like it goes, Randall's going to be here on Wednesday. It just predicts a ton of shit. It's like, Randall's going to be here Monday. Randall's going to be here Tuesday.
Right. So but gives you every option. So one's right.
What they think is if you have two things that it predicts, the likelihood of a third is more possible. So back in 1998, so think about this, 98, it predicted that Donald Trump, the president, would be on Joe Rogan's podcast. So this is before Joe Rogan had a podcast.
Before that, anybody thought of that. This thing put this out.
Before Joe Rogan had a podcast, and before Donald Trump was the president, said Joe Rogan will interview the president, Donald Trump, on his podcast. Okay? And so, in 98, you'd have been like, that's the silliest shit ever.
Well, maybe Barron had something to do with it because he's a time traveler.
But part of that prediction was, it said that 39 days after that interview, that we would have a war with aliens in the sky over DC. And that's what Tuesday was. And that's what everybody was. They were marking their calendar based on.
So, are you aware Trump's going to? I think it's this weekend. Notre Dame. They've rebuilt Notre Dame Cathedral.
Okay.
And they're commemorating it or opening it or whatever. And there's 50 heads of state that are going to be there. So you're going to have 50 primary targets in France, where we already know during the Olympics they shut down the entire fucking power grid. Like fucking France was in a blackout. I mean, I'm sure they're going to have all kinds of aerial protection and shit there.
I don't know why he would do. I mean, I get it. I get why he does do these things because
he's a fucking movie star.
Because his ego is so fucking big. But dude, don't.
Not only that, you've got like the fucking B and C team for Secret Service. They just had a Secret Service guy had a fucking ND somewhere. I don't think it was on his detail, but that just happened. Like there's all kinds of corruption and hearings going on over the Secret Service shit, and he's going to fucking France to Notre Dame.
Yeah, I would say let's hold off until you're actually sworn in as president.
Yeah, let's stop having him and fucking RFK on the same fucking airplane together. Like Forcella said, like, I just run first form, right? I just do what we do. And me and my partners, we don't even fly on the same fucking airplane together in case one of the motherfuckers crashes. At least one of us is still around.
Especially going to Europe.
Yeah.
But again, here's the thing about that. If you kind of pay attention.
And I didn't hear him say it, right? Yeah. It is a news company that's released this information.
If you pay attention to the reality of wokeness in itself is a paper tiger. And you think about it, just by the United States electing Donald Trump, most of those governments are falling a fucking part because we elected Donald Trump. Like,
okay, so do
just
you know
the election of Donald Trump is changing how the world perceives everything, because they understand that the agenda is dead.
Yeah. So did you hear about South Korea?
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me what you know about South Korea right now. As of yesterday.
The president decided that the president basically decided that all his officials were being influenced by North Korea and declared martial law, and then their assembly got together and voted and shut the martial law down.
Have you seen the pictures and the video? It's still
weird.
Live video.
It's weird because like they keep talking about this is the weird part. They keep talking about Korean Special Forces storming the
ROK Marines and Korean Special Forces. But it was all U.S. gear.
But that's because it's South Korea. South Korea is going to have all the same kit.
Like all the shit had panos and fucking quads.
But the interesting thing about that is they had all the kit on that you would go to the arms room to get, but nobody had a single weapon. So again, weird.
The military seems on his side.
You know what's interesting? You know what is more interesting though is you think about January 6th, right? You think about January 6th and then being like, "Oh, it was an insurrection." And then you look at the shit that is going on. Have you seen what's going on in Georgia?
In Turkey?
No, Georgia.
What about where else fell? Somewhere else fell. They have they've got a whole coup going on in where?
Well, it's a country
of Georgia. Okay.
Yeah, it's the country of Georgia.
Yeah, what's the capital there?
I don't know what the capital is. But have you seen them fucking attacking their parliament? I mean, they're shooting full on fireworks in there, hitting everything with lasers. I mean, they are.
That's happening in France with the fucking the farmers' revolt. That's happening in the UK. It's happening in a lot of places. So did you hear what the South Korean president said? He said, "I'll wait and see what Donald Trump has to say." Like they say that this is the South Korean version of Donald Trump.
Well, I mean, we'll see. The hard thing about Korea, the hard thing about the rest of the world is, when we say left and right, here in the United States, when we say left and right, we're usually talking about a specific thing. And then in the rest of the world, when they say it, it's different. It's not the same thing. It's almost flip-flopped. So we'll see what happens. I mean, the thing about Korea that most people don't understand is South Korea has been on a war footing since the end of the Korea War, meaning they have been preparing to go to war with North Korea since the end of the Korean War. They have mandatory service for all their men. So they have a full conscript army. Everybody goes and trains. Everybody gets ready. When you go to Seoul, Korea, it's because it is so close to the border. There's bunkers and fucking sandbags and barbed wire I mean, it's like you're in the defense. So I would assume that from a psychological point of view, that growing up in South Korea, people got to just be over it. Because they've said for a long time.
Maybe they don't know.
Well, they've said for a long time. South Korea has always said that the only reason why North and South Korea have not been unified is because the Americans keep holding them back.
So that's, yeah. Yep. And I would think it was the same living in like Berlin and shit, right?
Yeah.
With the wall and everything. It was the same thing that whole time. So, and even somewhat as kids, right? That whole, we might go to war is just put into you in school, right? The whole duck and cover thing and, the bomb shelters and just the readiness, the Cold War type stuff. Like, we had a little bit of it, but I was real young when we were doing that. By the time I was in the 5th grade, which is really my first real probably memories of school, I remember in the 5th grade, the day after came out. So we weren't like doing duck and cover drills and shit there. And then all of the other schools I went to were on military bases, and I don't remember doing them much there either.
Institutional. So we had an institutional memory. In the 50s, so in the 1950s, the threat of nuclear war was real because it was so new. And what a lot of people don't know is during that time period, we built up between the Russians and us. We had something like 35,000 nuclear weapons The Russians had the same. So we had enough, between the two countries, we had enough nuclear weapons to destroy the planet, 10 times over. During the Reagan administration, we both reduced our stockpiles. So
I remember
U.S.
the weapons inspectors.
Yeah, so the U.S. the U.S. I think is at somewhere, again, classified information, so you don't know the real numbers. But we're at somewhere in the 5,000 range. Russia's supposedly in the 4,000 range.
Which is when we went from one missile, one fucking bomb, to one missile, 12, 24 dispersion units, the MIRVs and stuff.
MIRVs. So we reduced the amount of nuclear weapons overall because, again, it was just madness in the sense of if I have 10, you have to have 10. If I have 20, you have to have when the reality is probably if we would have stopped at 100, if just 100's all we need. Because what are you going to do? If I drop 100 nukes on your country, you don't exist anymore. The reality is people don't even understand the fact that you could use tactical nukes in the United States and hit... I'll bet if you hit 10 major cities within the United States, we would not function as a country for a long time. So you don't need all those weapons. It was just basically making sure that I had as many as you did. But in the 50s, there was a real threat. And so in the 50s, they used to do all that stuff. By the time you and I were going to school, the memory had it hadn't passed, but it was like, well, if it didn't happen then, it's probably not going to happen now. It's kind of like people now. If you think about today, right? When you think about today, nobody's worried about nuclear weapons.
Right. They're really trying to get people to be worried about. FEMA just released a whole thing about what to do if a nuclear bomb goes off in your city.
Nobody's really worried about nuclear weapons. And
But media's really trying to push that.
Well, it's because the reality, if you think about it, we are in more danger of nuclear war right now than we were when they tried to put missiles in Cuba. Because when they tried to put missiles in Cuba, it was just... you think about it. It was just a shipping issue, right? It was just, hey, we're going to ship some missiles down into Cuba. We're going to set them up. It was a shipping issue. NATO and, the NATO countries and Russia are currently at war, right? We currently have a real fight where people are punching each other in the face. And if you don't think that the person that is backed up in the corner the hardest that has a nuclear weapon wouldn't use it, you're just, it's kind of ignorant. So
why hasn't he used it?
Because he's not backed in a corner yet. Here's the thing. The United States, because of Obama, okay, so there was a law in the United States as of 1934 that forbid propaganda to be put on the United States citizens.
That, yeah.
And so he undid that law, and what that meant is the entire political cycle. So if you look at anything that's been going on in the political cycle since Obama, it's all propaganda based. Like if you're really running around calling your opponents Nazis, that is propaganda. That's not real. It's propaganda. So this is all a propaganda cycle. Everything coming out of Ukraine to the United States public is propaganda. Why? We have to show the American people, or we have to show the Western countries that Ukraine is winning in order to keep giving them money. The minute you show the real casualties that are going on in Ukraine, the real equipment loss that's going on in Ukraine, people are going to get tired of it. It's that Vietnam syndrome.
But what do they care? They're just going to do it anyways. Fucking people aren't going to fucking stop them.
The issue is you have to avoid the Vietnam syndrome, right? You have to avoid 100,000 people marching on Washington, D.C. because of endless wars.
How many were there January 6th?
Oh, I think 5,000. It wasn't that big. But that was a different thing, right?
Right. There was no weapons there.
So
the only weapons were used against civilians.
Yeah. So it's kind of a different thing, but that's that propaganda. So when you look at Ukraine, you're looking at it through a lens of distortion because we have to show them in a positive light. We can't show the corruption. We can't show the troop losses that they've had. We can't show the equipment losses that they've had. We have to show everything in a good light and just show Russia as being completely wiped out. If you look at, for a good example of that is, look at Ukraine's reported casualty figures for Russia. When you look at their equipment, when you see what Ukraine is saying that they've destroyed more equipment than Russia ever had.
So it's bullshit.
It's propaganda. Now, again, Russia is getting its fucking ass whooped. I mean, the Ukrainians, don't get me wrong, the Ukrainians are in a really good fight. They are fighting their asses off. But the Ukrainians cannot sustain the same losses that the Russians can. The Russians, the one thing that the Russians have always proven, whether you're fucking Napoleon, Adolf Hitler, Alexander the Great, they've always shown that in the long run, Russia will still be there. You will not. Ukraine, the only thing Ukraine can do is a delaying fight. That's it. You already have Zelensky talking about peace deals where Russia keeps all its territory, Russia keeps all the territory that it gained, and they give back the territory that they've, as long as they can stay in power. So it's kind of an interesting quagmire. So when, he's not really backed into a corner. There is millions.
So the people pushing all this, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever the puppet masters are they hoping that he uses a nuclear weapon at some point?
No. What the hope has always been is the same thing that we do when we go into a Middle Eastern country. The hope is like what happened to Gaddafi. The hope is that we will create a scenario where local forces will overthrow the government that is currently in power, meaning that one of the oligarchs would kill Putin and then sue for peace, and now we would have an open channel for someone who could be manipulated by the U.S. government.
What does sue for peace mean?
It just means, hey, we want to talk. We want peace deals.
So it's not a lawsuit.
No, it's not a lawsuit. It's just saying, hey, let's fucking iron this out.
Would you like to see him use a nuclear weapon?
Would I like him? No, I wouldn't like to see him because I know the end results.
What's the end result?
The end result is everybody gets trigger happy, and we're lucky if we survive it.
You don't think he could just let one go in Ukraine and that'd be the end of it?
No, he couldn't. There are too many NATO countries. Like, the reality is Poland has nuclear weapons. There are too many NATO countries that have skin in the game to where if he detonated a nuclear weapon within Ukraine border proper, it would escalate. Now, the question would be, how far would it escalate? I don't know.
How much control do you think Trump has right now? Because it seems like there's two White House. It almost seems like there's two. They said when Reagan was president, didn't Reagan have the Texas White House? Like he wasn't in D.C. very much. He operated out of Texas, right? Mm-hmm. And I just heard Trump joking about we should just move the White House to Mar-a-Lago. And then everybody was crying and whining, and he told Canada, he said, "Oh, you won't pay for your NATO bill. We'll just annex you and make you the 51st state," which I thought was awesome. And then all the little motherfuckers are like, "We're leaving the United States, going to Canada." Wouldn't that be funny if that just became part of the United States? He's like, Trudeau can just be the governor of Canada.
Yeah, we don't want Canada.
Well, I'd like their resources.
No, we don't want Canada. Here's the reality.
We take the unwanted, we send them to France.
But here's the reality.
We take the 10% of patriots.
Here's the reality.
It'd be easier for them to come to the SOE events.
No, the reality is Canada's economy depends on the United States, period.
I think all around the world their economies.
Most economies do, but Canada especially their economy depends on the United States. The only reason, because you're like, we want their resources. The only reason we're not using their resources is because of the current administration. It was the current administration that shut down the pipeline. It's the current administration that keeps us from using those resources, not Canadians. I guarantee you, the minute Trump is in power and starts talking about fucking opening that pipeline, the Canadians are going to be turning that valve. They need the money. It's all, it's fucking horseshit.
Well, when we say Canada, right, we think of people that look like us. The crazy, and I think Canada is like California. The crazies are in 10% of the landmass.
Yeah, true.
And it's controlled. And when you look at those are not people who were born in Canada. Those are not motherfuckers. It's just like Ireland right now. Is it Ireland? Ireland's not fucking run. There's nobody running Ireland that's fucking Irish. There's not a red-haired Irish speaker. They're all from other fucking countries.
That's what happens when you have open border policy.
Yeah, I mean, look at the fucking mess happening in Germany right now. Did you see Russia was hitting up gay clubs? Did you see they were breaking down gay clubs and shit? That's how the news put it out. The Russians hit some gay clubs. Apparently, it's illegal to be gay in Russia or whatever their deal is. But what it actually was is if you looked at the paperwork that the police had there, those were conscript papers, and the dudes that they were arresting had dodged their draft or their conscript, and they happened to be in a gay club or they were gay dudes.
Think about that. That's
what people were saying. Whatever video I watched, people were like, "That's the last motherfucker, a gay dude that they fucking whacked over the head. That's the last unit I want to be in."
Well, the reality is, there's no. I mean, outside of some specific, very specific units. There's no goddamn unit you want to be in the Russian army that's out front, because they're still doing fucking World War II charge to the fucking next fighting hole. Like, they're still doing.
Yeah, they're using them to find landmines and shit.
You don't want to be.
You can see the videos of it. They have one night vision, and you've got 12 dudes with his hand on the shoulder of the guy in front, and the guy in the very front has the night vision. It's fucked, man.
Yeah, you don't want to be.
Did you see the video that's going around? It was a short, and a dude stands up, pisses on a tree, and another buddy runs up and you just got us killed.
Yeah.
You know, obviously that's scripted or whatever. But is it that prevalent? Like, if you stand up and take a piss, I guess they do, right? Because the temperature is so drastic, it would be like a fucking strobe.
Yeah. The issue with what they're showing you, is it's ground. You're talking about ground thermals, and ground thermals are good
if you happen to be there when it happens.
But
from air,
ground thermals are good, but that's not how they're getting people. They're getting everybody with air assets, because you get such a better picture. So imagine Brandel out here peeing on the ground. With a ground asset, there's all kinds of things that can get in the way to keep you from seeing that thing. But when you're up in the air, now you have this big heat signature. And what they do with it is the same thing we did back in the day when they used to count fires. You can use your aerial assets to identify where everybody's at and how many people are there, get your, troop locations, troop movements, and then use that information to assess assets against it. So you wouldn't necessarily, the example they used in that video is, you peed on a tree, now we got blown up. You wouldn't want to expose your assets based off of one hit, right? Basically what you would do is you would get that one hit and you'd be like,
following back to the rest.
Yeah, you'd be like, oh, okay. We know there's one Russian here. And then you would just use the assets to figure out how many are there. And then you would, because what the Russians do, and not necessarily by going out and peeing on trees, is the Russians do, and that's when they were emptying the prisons, is they use, let's just say they're not so well trained forces to expose Ukrainian assets.
So they use them to draw the fire. So
they use them to draw the fire. So if if Brandel's out here pissing and you're back in the rear and you're like, fire some mortars at his ass, and you fire 5 mortars, I'm using counter battery radar to identify where your mortars are. If I lose Brandel, that's not as big a deal as you losing your fucking mortar positions. So that's kind of what they do. That's what the Russians do, and it's what they've always done. That's that, you get the ammo, you get the gun, right? You're just drawing fire. You
might have lost more bodies, but we have a lot bigger percentage.
So it's kind of like when they keep talking about. Do you ever see losses? Ukrainian losses of M1 Abrams, Leopards.
I don't think they're even showing you losses of human beings.
Because they have to propaganda that stuff out, and they are losing that equipment. Like they've they have lost HIMARS systems. The Russians have located those HIMARS systems and hit them when they're on the move. So it's not this.
What are they hitting them with?
They're usually using those suicide drones. Have you ever seen that? You see that video? You see that video of the 3 Ukrainians on the road next to their vehicle, and you see this big fucking
chasing
kite?
them? Yeah.
Just this big white thing that's about 3 inches from the ground. That's the suicide drones.
Okay.
They're big. They're not for the Russians, those suicide drones that are loitering over the target area, they're fucking big. They're not tiny. They're not little drones. So is Russia? The reality is Russia in a precarious position? Maybe. Or maybe everybody's just feeding into the fucking propaganda. Now, again, not that and I don't want to take anything away from the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainians are fucking fighting their asses off. They are fighting their asses off. But it's...
Would the United States do better than the Ukraine's doing right now?
I think we would have already gone to tactical nuclear weapons. Because the difference is, and this is the weird part, Ukraine is fighting Russia like Russians fight. Russia is fighting Ukraine like Russians fight. They're using those same tactics.
You don't think we have advisors over there?
We do, but for whatever reason, you don't see them operating in the same. And I know why. Let me reverse. The truth of the matter is the Ukrainians don't have the numbers, right? So when the Ukrainians pin a battalion on the map, when they say this is 1st Battalion of whatever, it's really only a company. They don't have a battalion. So they can't operate in the same manner that we do, where we're combined arms. So you never see infantry supporting tanks, supported by helicopters, supported by aircraft, supported by artillery. They don't do combined arms like we do. So they're still doing the same thing that Russians, that they were trained to do when they were a fucking Soviet bloc country.
How come Russians not using airplanes?
Because they don't. Because the advanced man pads and things that are on the ground in Ukraine just fucking take them out. They don't have the capability to. For the Russians, first off, they don't have the numbers. They don't have the capabilities. They don't have the jamming technology.
Russians can't. Why aren't they bombing them?
I don't know. There's a lot of things that are going on.
Like if we look at a map of Ukraine,
uh-huh.
What percentage of Ukraine is in combat right now, or been leveled to the ground? It's not a large portion of Ukraine.
It's not a huge portion.
It's like Russia gonna come to the United States and fight a war, but only fight a war in fucking
California.
Yeah.
Right. Well, there's could be a lot of reasons why. I don't understand it either, especially at this point. Right. Again, at the beginning, you have to understand when this started. Putin's generals, like his advisors, were like, we're going to drive right into Kiev. You'll be sitting in the parliament building in 24 hours. Like that. That's how confident they were. Because remember, when the Russians went into the Donbass, that's what happened. There were people on the side of the road with Russian flags going, yay, glad you guys got here. But going into Ukraine proper didn't turn out the way it was supposed to. And so they overstepped their original plan. So the plan, if you look at the territory that Russia has maintained right now, that was Putin's original plan. But the generals were like, we can take the whole country. All we have to do is get to Kiev. That's why they went to the airport. That's why they had the convoys going straight towards Kiev. But the Ukrainians put up a fight that no one in the world expected. Like we did, we had already closed shop, put the shutters up on the embassy, and we're like, all right, all right, former Ukraine, you're going to be part of the Soviet Union again. We turned our backs on Ukraine.
Do you think Putin spoke to Trump?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sure they've. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I know he has. Because the headlines were, how can Trump
stop this war.
No, how can Trump? No, they weren't. Matt, here's the thing. This is the problem with Trump derangement syndrome. They weren't mad that he was trying to stop the war. They were mad
that he spoke
because he didn't have he didn't use secure communications through the federal government. He just called the motherfucker, and they're like, "Oh, anybody could have been listening to that, and North Korea could be listening." They were all bitching about it. They spent 5 minutes in the New York Times or New York whatever bitching about him not using classified means of communication, right? And then they're like, all he talked about was ending the war in Ukraine. Who cares if he used non-secure? How's North Korea, China going to use that against the United States by him talking to Putin, going, "Hey, guess what? We're going to figure out how to end this war."
Do you think
it's just bullshit?
Do you think Trump and Putin he's like, just hold on, as soon as I'm in office, this will stop?
He has, that Trump has told Putin this, but Putin has actually come out post talking to Trump and has said it is very dangerous for Donald Trump, and he doesn't think that he has the capability of becoming the president because so many people are trying to kill him. And he also has warned that, you still have 45 days of another of the old government that is trying to escalate things into a nuclear war. So we'll see. I think the escalation, the Ukraine escalation, is over because Biden's on his pardon kick.
Yeah, they're trying to send another $40 billion into Ukraine right now.
Yeah, whatever. $40 billion.
Okay, so what do you think about the pardon?
I don't think that he should be. I don't think that. How do you say this? Because I don't know legally. I know that there's a legal recourse here. I don't believe, and I know this is wrong, but I believe that the President of the United States should have the power to pardon anybody he wants, right? Pardon, remember what I'm saying, pardon anybody he wants. But that's post-conviction.
Right, he hasn't been convicted.
He hasn't been convicted of a crime. So how are you, not only what he...
And it seems like that's just some bullshit gentleman's agreement. You don't fuck up my kid if I pardon him, and the next it just kind of keeps going and going and going,
Well, you would assume that if there was a gentleman agreement, that the gentleman agreement would be that Donald Trump would pardon Hunter.
Well, I think so the theory is that Donald Trump would have pardoned Hunter, and to kind of take that win away, because if Donald Trump was able to pardon Hunter, all those people that were kind of on the fence, or, maybe he is a Nazi, maybe, all the propaganda bullshit. And first day in office, Trump pardons Biden's son. He wins over all those fucking maybes.
Yeah.
So they took that away.
Well, the issue is this.
And what's to keep fucking Trump's administration from just going after him anyways?
Well, because then you would be tied up in court because of presidential pardons. Presidential pardons have already been upheld within the Supreme Court, so that you can't really go after for him for that specific thing. Now, the interesting thing about this pardon is people keep talking about the gun charge, right? That it's that the reason why he had to do it is because the political system politicalized the justice system to go after an opponent's son and put him in jail over this trivial gun charge. Okay, that's what everybody keeps talking about. But again, that's Democrat propaganda. It's not real.
It's also their playbook.
But it's Democrat propaganda. It's not real because the pardon goes back to 2011. 2011 is when his son was working at Burisma in Ukraine, which automatically means
10% for the big guy.
But it automatically means that the administration, that President Biden knows that his son committed crimes while he was working at Burisma.
And that money filtered to him through cousins and
here's the problem. Here's the problem. The problem is if you pardon your son because of illegal activity that he did on your behalf, right? If you pardon your son because of illegal activity that he did on your behalf, that doesn't keep you from... That doesn't protect you in any way whatsoever. You could still be charged with those crimes.
Even if they charge Biden. I mean, Biden's got, what, a couple of years? I mean, he's not even cognizant, really.
Yeah, but we can't, again, we can't use that as an excuse for violation of the law.
I hear you.
The law,
should the gun charge even exist?
If you, 100%. 100% the gun charge should exist, and he should go to court for it, because it wasn't, again, people think, because of propaganda, they think that the reason why he was in court was because he lied on a gun form. It's not why he was in court. He was in court because he lied on a gun form and received the firearm. That is when he committed the felony, is when he went and picked up that firearm. He received that firearm illegally, knowingly committing a crime. Not to mention, the Secret Service covered it up, and he illegally disposed of said firearm. So that's why he's in jail, or that's why he's in this position, not because he lied on a form. He's in this position because he took possession of said firearm.
Have you seen this stuff going through court right now over the oil trap or the solvent trap?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? So dude's running a...
I know about the solvent traps. But...
Dude has, I think he has a gun license. He has a firearms license. He's running out of his house or something. Sheriff and feds raid his house.
Yeah.
I don't think there was anything else illegal. They found a solvent trap. He ends up going to court. He fights this in court. He loses in court or something, appeals, says this is a solvent trap. It is not a firearm, but they charged it as a firearm. Yeah. So it's kicked up to the higher court. It just went to the higher courts, and the higher court said, this is not a firearm, kicks it back down, and I guess that opens it up to, like, unravel all the suppressor shit for the ATF somehow. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. The issue is, so you run into the law, and you run into the spirit of the law.
Their interpretation.
Of the law.
Isn't that, what's that called that just got unraveled with all that fucking, what's it called? The ATF.
Well, I know what you're talking about. It was the EPA case. Chevron deference. Okay, so, but the ATF themselves said that a solvent trap is not a suppressor. Okay?
So what is a solvent trap? Like, what's the actual use for it?
What is a solvent trap? A solvent trap is a 90% suppressor.
It doesn't, like, I couldn't use a solvent trap for something else?
It
looks like an oil filter, right?
As a fake solvent trap. No, they look like, if I could go to the gun show, buy a solvent trap, bring it here, and you go. That's a suppressor.
It doesn't fit on my tractor somewhere, or it doesn't get used in my fucking blast cabinet or solvent tank.
You're mixing two things. There is an oil filter adapter. So there is a oil filter adapter that people have made that adapts vehicle oil filters into suppressors. Okay, all it is just a screw-on piece that you put on your rifle. And then there's solvent traps. Now, solvent traps are legit. I don't want to say legit, because a lot of them are made out of fucking materials that wouldn't work anyways. But solvent traps are, again, I would say 90% suppressors.
Why are they called solvent traps?
Because the loophole, again, the workaround was, I put this thing on the barrel of my rifle to capture solvent when I'm pushing through my thing, right?
All right, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so the ATF, here's the rub. The ATF said solvent traps were legal.
There's no hole on the end until you fire the first round.
Right. No hole on the end until you fire the first round.
Once the first round is fired, are these disposable, or can you continue to use them for thousands of rounds?
It depends on who made it and Because again, you can go to the gun show and find people selling these damn solvent traps. They're made out of fucking nothing, aluminum, and I mean,
dude, you would think at this point that there's a fucking federal agent just following. Like,
it's
Feds selling the solvent traps.
Anytime I haven't been in a long time, but anytime I see somebody who's got a table of just solvent traps, I'm like, "What's up, federal agent?" Because again, but
so I thought a solvent trap. I thought a solvent trap looked like an oil filter, like my Kubota takes.
No.
And you screw it in line into my solvent cabinet to filter particles out of the solvent to keep it cleaner or something. So it has no other purpose.
Okay. No other purpose. It's basically it's one of those reach around things where it's like because again, law's very specific. You write the law. If I follow the letter of the law, it's kind of like the bullet button, right? The bullet button was just a way to get around the letter of the law. I don't have a problem with that, but a lot of people would have a problem with the fact that I just said that, because that shows you what you have to do in order to make the thing illegal. So, Americans are pretty ingenious when it comes to, because even when, I don't know if you know this, but I know the bullet button guy, the guy who invented the bullet button in California. And California created a specific law to outlaw the bullet button, to make the bullet button illegal. And I'm like, man, I was talking to him. I'm like, man, that sucks. You made all that money off the bullet button, and now they're going to make it illegal. And he's like, the minute they put the law out of what they were going to do, I already engineered another way to fucking do this without it. So it's pretty awesome. We're very. We're the mother of invention when the screws are put to us.
Do you think that shit's all going to unravel and it's just going to be
okay? Yeah, the reality is that everything that's going on with the ATF right now is in theory, I mean, who knows what's going to happen, right? Who knows? We still have 30 days or so until he's president. But in theory, you're looking at, with the ATF, the death throes of an organization that was not successful in preventing crime, not successful with preventing crime, not successful with handling the laws of this country very well.
Did you see?
They're already talking about. The crazy thing is, Donald Trump's not president. There are already people in the Senate and the House talking about just getting rid of the FBI. I mean, the ATF.
So Kash Patel has been appointed to. Apparently, none of this is actually sticking, right? Who's the border czar guy that was like Hegseth or something? Yeah. And he's like, we'll just deport all of them. No, you don't have to break up families. We'll deport the whole damn family. Yeah. Apparently there's some trash about him, and now there's talk of another person going in that point.
We'll see what happens.
And then like the Matt Gaetz thing, the Matt Gaetz thing came out, and now this chick's in place, and she was 100% pro fucking mask, lockdowns in Florida, and red flag laws.
I find it funny that, like, Kash Patel, especially with Kash Patel, but some of these other ones where they're all like the FBI, a bunch of people came out in the FBI that was like, we'll quit. We'll just quit. That's
perfect.
That's exactly what we want you to do. We don't need, like he says, 7,000 agents that are sitting in Washington, D.C. that don't do anything, don't do any law enforcement activity whatsoever.
Yeah, we're going to put you back and you're going to be cops. We're going to shut that down. It's going to be a museum.
I don't need 7,000 FBI agent cops either.
Yeah, he said FBI is getting out of the intelligence business. We're going to be law enforcement. Did you see all the screamers?
No, I didn't see screamers.
You didn't see Lake Michigan? All these 1,000 women have shown up to scream in rage over Donald Trump being elected to president.
Whatever.
You didn't see this?
No, mental illness is a real thing.
They're all the women shaving their heads, and they're not going to breed, and they're sterilized. I think that's fucking great.
That is great. That's great for the world, because
they just cut themselves off. They stop producing fucking what they've produced.
We're getting rid of mental illness.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. It's also kind of a. I think it's a. Have you actually?
It's all rich white chicks.
Have you actually seen any of it?
I've seen video of it.
Oh, because I haven't seen. I see everybody talking about it, but I haven't seen any of these people in real life.
Oh, you're talking about the 4B? No, I haven't seen any of it because we're not where the rich fucking wine moms are.
I just think it's.
They're all living in $1 million homes and shit. Those aren't broke bitches that are out there screaming at the fucking lake.
You just have a small minority of people with mental illnesses that are running around pretending that they're.
Imagine how nice it is to live in the house with them right now.
Like if you feel like you have to go all the way to Lake Michigan to scream because Donald Trump's the president, you've got a mental illness.
Did you see the chick that killed her dad because he voted for Trump with a fucking ice axe?
But again,
there's been several of those.
But again, this is what. Have you seen that story? The problem is, Dad was, what would you call it? He was incapable, meaning she had to feed him, she had to bathe him, she had to. I killed my dad because he voted for Donald Trump. That's bullshit. She killed him because she was tired of fucking taking care of him. She used that as an excuse to leverage sympathy in order to be able to kill her father, who, again, if anybody's ever had to take care of a parent at the end of life like that, that's a motherfucker. You know, it's a stressful thing, and
probably
that's all that was.
Another way than the ice axe. Though.
Well, I mean, that's again, she is mentally unstable, and that's why she did what she did.
And now we'll go to prison for that?
Hopefully. Well, yeah, she's going to go to prison for it.
Or a hospital somewhere.
They don't exist anymore.
I bet they still exist.
Not really. It's just a wing of the prison. So, yeah, she's going to jail for that, as she should, because there was other ways to handle that situation. But this is the reality of it. I fucking guarantee you, and you know this to be true because of where you live. I bet she cashed every one of those motherfucking checks.
Yeah.
I bet she cashed every one of those checks. And I'll bet that money didn't go to all. I bet that when she cashed those checks, it wasn't going to his care. So, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, you're probably right. All right, guys, this is going to be a short one. We got a bunch of equipment running outside the building here that's humming. We're going to go over and do Patreon Q&A right now and then do a live. The party is Saturday. As we record right now, it is Wednesday.
Kamikaze
so they probably won't hear this before that.
They'll hear it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody's welcome at the party. There is no cover fee or anything. If you want to be a vendor or you have a product, service, or good that you want to represent, just show up. We just need to know that you're coming and how much space you need. We will see you guys Saturday night. And if you didn't make it,
and that
you should have. Wish you had. You'll see the footage.
There is a cover charge for the party that's inside the party. So if you want to go to the party that's inside the party, there is a $10 cover charge. Brand will be collecting that money for the party that's inside the party.
For the Jeff party.
Yeah. No, it's just the party inside the party.
In the van. There is a VIP package. That's something completely different. You can see all that at soeparty.com.
And we're trying to raise money for a tank.
And a tank, yeah. So if you guys want to donate, oh man, I should just get a big one of those big pickle jars.
Dude, there's some nice chieftains out there right now for sale.
I know. Just a big pickle jar with a picture of a tank on the front of it.
$375,000. You get 2 tanks.
Yeah.
3 motors. Like there's a lot of shit. I don't remember what movie they had those in.
That was the one with Denzel Washington where he's. It's the one with Denzel Washington where he's doing the Medal of Honor review for Meg Ryan.
Got it. It's also the tank that was in the 1st or 2nd season of Walking Dead.
Correct. Yeah.
Yep. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Thanks.